I'm Shelley Fuld, Nasso, CEO of the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship. I had the honor of working with Ellen Stovall for years in the cancer community before I joined NCCS in 2013, and I worked closely with her for the last 3 years. When Ellen stepped down as the CEO of NCCS in 2008, the following video was made to pay tribute to her years of advocacy on behalf of cancer survivors.
December 23, 1971, President Richard Nixon declared war on cancer. That same day, 24-year-old Ellen Stovall, the new mother of an infant son, began to wage her own war against cancer as she started treatment for stage 4B, Hodgkin's lymphoma. Doctors told Ellen her odds of surviving were less than 20%. Hearing those words, the young mother from suburban Maryland made a vow. If she made it to the 2-year mark, she promised she would dedicate the rest of her life to cancer advocacy. One vow from one survivor would take cancer advocacy to new heights, giving hope and making a difference in the lives of millions touched by cancer.
She is not someone who takes up a cause lightly. She embraces it, she breathes it, she lives it, and she puts it out there for everybody to understand.
I was actually a founding member of the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship, and as the organization evolved, it became clear that we needed to have a Washington, D.C. presence. And Fitzhugh Mullen, who had been very instrumental in the founding of the organization, said, well, I have the perfect person to head up our Washington office. And she certainly lived up to everyone's expectations.
Clearly Ellen had organizational abilities and a sense of mission and an idealism that kind of buoyed her every action. So I think aside from helping get the organization going, the other most brilliant move on my part was grabbing Ellen and putting her in harness and keeping her there.
Well, I think the history of the Office of Cancer Survivorship is very dependent upon the existence of the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship, because the coalition back in, I want to say 1995, put together a white paper on where do we need to go next with survivorship issues. Ellen Stovall took that summary and presented it to the then director of the Cancer Institute, Richard Klausner, and said, you know, these are the imperatives that we think are important. And Dr. Klausner read those and came back to Ellen and said, you know, I think you're right, we need to do something about this. And he said that we need to create an Office of Cancer Survivorship at the Cancer Institute, which is what he did.
Every year, 1.2 million people get a diagnosis of cancer, and 1.2 million people's lives, to the extent that they're made better, have been touched or are going to continue to be touched by things Ellen has done to refocus cancer care and cancer research in this country.
We've worked as ASCO so closely with NCCS over the years on so many projects, it's hard to mention them all. Ellen has brought together the advocacy community in this group called the Cancer Leadership Council, which is one of the most important groups to advance ideas and kick around concepts. I think the Institute of Medicine's report came from a lot of her pushing. And now ASCO is very involved in survivorship, creating follow-up care plans for patients, a survivorship track at our annual meeting where we educate our members in this area. All of this comes directly with our work together with Ellen and NCCS.
Ellen understands that while one person receives a diagnosis of cancer, the illness is owned by the entire family. She's really been a courageous voice in calling attention to the need for people living with cancer to get full attention to their comfort and quality of life, their physical, emotional, social, and spiritual needs, as well as the needs of their families. She has really enabled us to bring the creativity and the energy of palliative care to begin to really meet the needs of people throughout their journey with cancer.
Today we defy the politics that deliberately divide us, all the politics that dare to put a price tag on cancer, on the millions of human lives touched by this horrid disease. Today we say, no more cancer.
Her goal, or one of her many goals, was to make sure that people didn't feel like they were victims to this disease, and to make people understand how to live with the disease and how to live full, incredible lives. I used to say to Ellen, you're out there doing our grunt work and you do it better than anyone.
And we're very tired of watching our friends and loved ones die while they continue to work on these issues.
Working in the Congress or working with the regulatory agencies is not easy. It takes a lot of stamina, but it also takes an agenda that has credibility with the public as well as the elected officials or the appointed officials. She never, ever lets her ego take over for her agenda.
She has a wonderful gift of convening and being able to help people find the common ground. You know, she is just so likable. No one has a bad word to say about Ellen.
We talk about leadership, and we talk about leaders, and generally people, when you talk about leadership and leaders, they think about generals and football players and that sort of thing. No, when I think about leaders, I think about Ellen.
It's hard to find someone who's more passionate than Ellen. If she's making a commitment to something, she does it 150%. There's no way of stopping her.
Ellen is everything. She is the NCCS leader. She's its cheerleader. She's provided its vision, its drive, its focus, and she's accomplished all of that with just a very stunning level of integrity for the patients and for the cause.
God bless Ellen Stovall and NCCS. I mean, what a gift they've given to anyone challenged with cancer and their families.
She has been one of the most important figures in the last 20 years of really advancing quality of care for people living with cancer and their families. Ellen Stovall is a hero in America today. She is truly a great American. I am deeply privileged to also say she's my friend.
She has accomplishment after accomplishment, and I know, thank goodness, she's not done. There will be more in the future.
My name is Nina Wendling, and I had the unique opportunity and privilege to work with Ellen Stovall at the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship for the last 10 years. Though Ellen stepped down as CEO of the organization in 2008, she never left NCCS. She continued to serve as the Senior Health Policy Advisor, focusing on the issues that were important to her and to the organization. Serving as a Senior Health Policy Advisor for NCCS allowed her to continue to do the work that was so important to her. What many people don't know is that Ellen was doing this work while facing challenges that were caused by the late and long-term effects of both her cancer and her cancer treatments. You know, words don't convey the importance of the work that Ellen's done. She's one of the few rare altruists who did her work purely for the benefit of others. I like to say that though Ellen was small in stature, she cast a long shadow, and one that we were all fortunate to be caught in.
Ellen dedicated her advocacy to empowering cancer survivors to live as well as they can with cancer and beyond. She believed in changing the conversation to ensure that survivors' wishes and values were included in decisions about their care. To honor Ellen's legacy, the board and staff of NCCS are committed to carrying forward this work to try to make cancer care the best it can possibly be for cancer survivors and their families.
I am Sig Roos. I am from Honesdale. and I really am Ellen's cousin, as are the dozen people in the second row sitting with her brother Steve. And I guess I'm now demonstrating why I'm the only one in the family who was willing to do this. Bear with me. And before I speak about Ellen, I want to thank John and Jonathan and Brianna and Steve for giving me this sad honor and for allowing me to try to give you all a sense of who Ellen was outside of her professional life. A sense of Ellen, the Girl Scout, the department store clerk, the candy striper, the cheerleader, the beauty queen, the pianist, and later mother, sister, wife, cousin, cook, voracious reader, and champion puzzle solver. She was the small-town girl whose father taught her how to persevere through any kind of difficulty, and whose mother instilled in her a remarkable sense of dedication to family and friends. I know I shouldn't ad-lib, but during that slideshow, we saw that picture of Ellen in the Oval Office, and I'm reminded of my Uncle Nathan. When I first moved to Boston, I kept meeting people who had pictures of President Kennedy on their kitchen walls. In Honesdale, we all had that picture on our wall. My Uncle Nathan got a hold of this photograph, much to Ellen's chagrin, and went over to Scranton because we didn't have a color Xerox machine in Honesdale, and copied it 10,000 times, and with my mother's help, his distributor, it found its way onto the wall of every bedroom in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. One of my earliest memories of Ellen is sitting next to her on a piano bench, fascinated by her and the metronome as she played. I think it was around 1957 or 1958, and I was either 3 or 4, and Ellen was 8 years older. I'm not sure what she was playing, but it was likely one of her favorite pieces, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, the 10th movement of a Bach cantata. Back around that time, I sat with Ellen. My father had promised Elle that he would give her $50 if she were to learn how to play that piece, and she did. And that was the selection that my cousin Naomi played during the silent prayer at Ellen's funeral last month. It may seem strange to some of you that that piece in celebration of Christ would figure so prominently in the life of a Jewish family. But in a family that embraces all religions and appreciates above all beautiful music, it's not strange at all. What is remarkable is the way in which that piece of music informed Ellen's life. A movement like Ellen, so sweet, intelligent, persistent, soulful, romantic, stirring, and I think importantly, evenly measured. It's almost as if Ellen embodied the rhythm and tonality of that piece as she went through her life, in good times and in bad. Ellen was deeply empathic, attuned to all of us and to nature's cycles. Her friend Jane read from Ecclesiastes at the funeral. That portion has meaning for everyone. But for Ellen, she truly lived from season to season. At around this time of year, every year, Ellen and my sister Liza would start planning our Passover. Then Ellen would look forward to the spring. That was pea and strawberry picking season. And then it was on to Jonathan's birthday, Seckel pear, and damson plum season. And then Ellen would start planning her birthday, Jonathan's, and then Christmas. John's and Christmas. And then it was back again to Passover. And when this cycle was punctuated 3 times by cancer, Ellen didn't miss a beat. She kept her rhythm. She kept moving forward. She never stopped to complain or yield to the pain. And as she recovered, she turned that darkness into light. I think of one of my favorite passages in Thoreau's diaries where he wrote about the water lily. Like Ellen, the water lily was, as Thoreau said, an emblem of purity that burst up so pure and fair as if to show us what beauty and sweetness can be extracted from the muck and slime of the earth. From that muck, her illnesses, Ellen built an extraordinary career in advocacy that, as we all know, changed the lives of all touched by cancer, and I believe changed our culture. And importantly, she did all of this with an incredible mutual support and love with John, Jonathan, Brianna, and Steve. She was an extraordinary listener, advocate, and friend. She was the heart of our family and of her circle of friends. And when we lost her, somehow our spheres were knocked off their axes. So as we think of Ellen and as we carry on her legacy, I hope we can find resonance in Bach's cantata, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, the original name of which was, in German, Herz und Mund und Tat und Leben, heart and mouth, and deed and life. That was Ellen, a woman of huge heart, great intelligence, and a boundless devotion to her family, friends, and society, and a life well lived.
Good afternoon. I'm Julia Rowland, and I'm the closer. Sig, I wish they put you last. I'd almost like to defer my time and say, I think you've just heard it all. That was incredibly moving. First, a thanks to Shelley, Fuld, Nasso for asking me to be the closer, but more importantly, for allowing me to speak this afternoon. And importantly, to Ellen's family, to John, Jonathan, Brianna, and all the rest of her family for sharing Ellen with us. So very, very many of us, only some of whom are in the room today, that we were able to have that time with her. To be the closer, finding words that have not already been spoken or sentiments expressed, pulling it all together as we strive to bring Ellen here into the room with us, in our mind's eye, in our thoughts, and always in our hearts. I fear that there will be no closure today to this topic, no closure on the profound loss that many of us feel in the wake of Ellen's death. Rather, I hope that we can leave with some sense of having celebrated a truly remarkable woman and her unique life and extraordinary contributions. Leave with a sense of coming to peace with this difficult reality. And yes, Elizabeth, I want to pick up the phone, send an email, tweet, do something, reach out and say, whoa, Ellen, what did you think about this? And by the way, moonshot, really? And when are you going to have your private audience with Joe Biden? I know you're going to have one. Ellen, once upon a time, railed against the fact that there were all of these Race for the Cure events. And she railed against it because she said, well, what about Race for the Care? I thought, great idea, except for the branding issue. I think that would be phenomenal. So why me as a speaker? Aside from my being an unabashed and long-affirmed Ellen Stovall groupie, perhaps it's because I quite literally would not be here or in the position I serve if it were not for Ellen. You heard a little bit of it, but here's how the story goes. Back in 1995, in anticipation of the first National Congress, as you heard, the coalition started in Albuquerque and then moved to Washington because we need to have a policy voice, and we were going to have our first Congress. Betsy Clark, who's somewhere over here, was the chair. I was the co-chair, but small c. Betsy was really out there putting this together, and she and Ellen together decided that we needed to have a white paper, or actually a series of white papers that we were going to prepare us for this Congress. And so what they did was that they launched a community-based participatory process to define the quality of cancer care from the patient's perspective, which is basically what the coalition has been trying to do for the last 30 years. We had 3 working groups, lots of people involved from diverse backgrounds, from clinicians and researchers and policy wonks and advocates of different kinds and people who ran programs and funded programs. And we had 3 groups that discussed quality cancer care, physiologic long-term and late effects of cancer treatment, and psychosocial issues of cancer survivorship. And the results of these gatherings, et cetera, and all of this expertise pulled together was this incredible document, The Imperatives for Quality Cancer Care, Access, Advocacy, Action, and Accountability. This document had 12 imperatives in it, all of which were then at the November 13, 1995 National Congress adopted as basically the core elements that we wanted to be pursuing. Ellen, not satisfied with that, we can all put a report and we know what happens to reports, they sit on a shelf, they gather dust. No, Ellen took this document, she marched down to the NIH campus and she met with Rick Klausner, with whom she had a very personal but also a very deep professional relationship, and she said, he was and NCI director, she said, you need to read these. Smart man, quick study. He happened to be leaving town at the moment. He took it with him on the flight. He read this thing and he came back, and as the story goes, he didn't even pass go. He didn't go to his executive committee. He went down to Congress and said, I'm creating this office at the National Cancer Institute to address the unique needs of this population. It was a coup. That was a coup. Basically, Ellen convinced Rick Klausner that it was no longer acceptable to treat cancer and street patients, treat them and street them, as we used to say, pat them on the back and say, good luck, have a nice life. No. NCI needed to commit to support and direct the science that would help us understand to what we were returning survivors. What was the cost of the remarkable advances being made in detecting, treating, curing, or controlling cancer on individuals, families, communities, and then society at large. In President Clinton's remarks, and you saw that wonderful rose garden picture that I love having in my slide deck, Clinton is quoted as having said, survivors have special psychological, physical, and healthcare counseling needs that we're only beginning to understand. The office will support the much needed research that will help cancer survivors deal with the problems they face even after their cancer is cured. One person can make a difference. Ellen made that difference. The rest of the story, Ellen turned around and lobbied me to apply for the job. No, I didn't do this with her. This is Ellen. Ellen went down there, created this office, and then turned around and told me, you need to apply to direct this office. I was flattered to be asked. Great trepidation did I apply. Very anxious about meeting with Dr. Klausner. And Ellen would later tell me, she said, you know, I went and talked to Dr. Klausner. I told him he had to hire you. She said, I told him because you have a great sense of humor. And I said, well, Ellen, that's really interesting, because when I had my conversation with him and I happened to make some aside to him, I said, well, you know, Dr. Klausner, when you find the cure for cancer next week, my office will still be here. Pretty quirky sense of humor. I got the job anyway, and I've never looked back. It's been one of the most amazing rides for me, and it's really because one person can make a difference. Surprisingly to me also is that Ellen really didn't like public speaking. She would say she really doesn't want to do this. And I say surprising because she was a wonderful, gifted speaker. Clear, concise, compelling, always present, and personal. I remember vividly going down to Congress several years ago to testify before the Senate Cancer Coalition, at that time chaired by Dianne Feinstein and Sam Brownback. And while I was on the agenda to speak, it was immediately clear to me that the person they really wanted to hear from was not another talking head, but Ellen, the real voice of survivorship. I will admit that Fran Drescher was also there, but I'd like to think, I'd like to think they really wanted to hear the mellifluous tones of Ellen and her incredible wisdom about what it meant to travel that path and what we had to be doing to address the needs of survivors. When she spoke, the room was wrapped. Our work, however, here is not done. I know that Ellen would want me to exhort us all to attend to the task at hand and those of the future. The best tribute we can pay to her would be to take up where she left off so suddenly and champion the vision of survivorship that she so skillfully led all of us collectively to define. I hope that all of us this afternoon have brought each of us closer to Ellen, even if she's departed our physical realm. Ellen always managed to have the great quote, the perfect bon mot at the end or in the middle of somewhere in the presentation. And I struggled to find one for today, so I'm simply going to end with a phrase that I've used for the past many years whenever we both got together in whatever public speaking occasion, wherever we found ourselves, and exchanged to one another. I love you, Ellen.
Thank you, Julia, and to all of our speakers today. I suspect we're all going to leave here missing Ellen a little bit more than we did before because of these incredible tributes to her. Before we close, I want to thank Philip Dufour and his wonderful team for helping us put on this event today. Ellen adored you, Philip, and we are deeply grateful for your help. Thank you to Becky and Gary Crimstein for producing that incredible video, tribute video in 2008, and for updating it for us today. What a wonderful, perfect, lasting tribute to Ellen's life work. Thank you to Francie Taylor, who baked chocolate and desserts for us. Ellen loved chocolate, and we knew we had to have chocolate today, and Francie brought some desserts for us. I want to thank all of you for coming and for supporting us at NCCS through this difficult time. Ellen was our colleague, mentor, and friend, and we miss her every day. She left her mark on us, and we have learned from her how to be strong advocates with integrity and with a singular focus on the needs of cancer survivors. Together with your help, we will carry on her legacy. We ask for your help in passing the PACT Act in Ellen's memory. Finally, I'd like to end with a poem by Elissa Boncheck-Adams, a popular blogger and breast cancer advocate who died last year. I also looked through my emails for some inspiration from Ellen, like Dr. Pastor did, and the last email I had from her was commenting on President Obama and Jerry Seinfeld's video, which she said we had to watch because it was a hoot, and she wished Sam a happy birthday. But another email from her back in December, she mentioned that she had seen this poem and saved it, and she had followed Elissa Boncheck-Adams' blog throughout her cancer experience. The blog is entitled When I Die. When I die, don't think you've lost me. I'll be right there with you, living on in the memories we have made. When I die, don't say I fought a battle or lost a battle or succumbed. Don't make it sound like I didn't try hard enough or have the right attitude or that I simply gave up. When I die, don't say I passed. That sounds like I walked by you in the corridor at school. When I die, tell the world what happened, plain and simple. No euphemisms, no flowery language, no metaphors. Instead, remember me and let my words live on. Tell stories of something good I did. Give my children a kind word. Let them know what they mean to me, that I would have stayed forever if I could. Don't try to comfort my children by telling them I'm an angel watching over them from heaven or that I'm in a better place. There is no better place to me than being here with them. They have learned about grief, and they will learn more. That is part of it all. When I die someday, just tell the truth. I lived, I died, the end. Thank you all for joining us today, and please join us in the reception afterwards.